I spent 200,000 yuan to build this pig farm. I was so confident at the time, thinking I could raise my black pigs well, but because of the location, there's a reservoir at the bottom of the mountain. The government told me I couldn't run a farm here. Now I still have more than 20 pigs, but they've taken them away. Everything I built at the foot of the mountain is gone. I started this farm at the end of 2023. These pigs are like my children. I've poured my heart and soul into them. When I first started, my relatives gossiped behind my back, saying I was useless. I'm 24 years old now. My friends all have their own jobs, but here I am, failing to raise my pigs and falling into debt. Sometimes I question myself, what did I do wrong? Everything's gone. What should I do? What am I supposed to do now? In March 2025, a 24-year-old woman from Anhui broke down in tears while sharing her story. She had spent 200,000 yuan to build a pig farm, but only to be told by the government that the nearby reservoir made her farm illegal, forcing her to demolish everything and leaving her in heavy debt. The situation raises two key questions. Number one, which came first, the reservoir or the pig farm? If the pig farm was built first and the reservoir came later, it's unreasonable for the government to shut her down now. In that case, a woman would not only deserve compensation but perhaps double compensation for her losses. Number two, if the reservoir was there first, did she get government approval before building the pig farm? If she didn't, then the primary responsibility falls on her. Without proper permits, she was bound to face bureaucratic obstacles. But the real issue is, if she did apply for approval, why didn't the environmental authorities stop her at the beginning? Why wait a year after she had already invested so much to tell her it's not allowed? Who approved it in the first place, and why is it that decisions now being overturned? Was this an intentional trap, encouraging her to invest so and the government could later seize her assets? A Chinese blogger living overseas commented that this is part of the Chinese Communist Party's strategy to exploit ordinary people. Local officials remained silent during the construction phase, even using these projects to claim awards and secure national subsidies. But once a project starts generating income, they find excuses to tear it down. From 2013 to 2018, this tactic reportedly bankrupted many rural farmers, leaving widespread devastation in its wake. The blogger suggested a potential solution, building a large biogas tank to process pig manure. Microbial fermentation could turn the waste into safe, eco-friendly biogas and liquid fertilizer, far better than chemical fertilizers and completely harmless to the environment. The blogger concluded with a harsh reality check. Kid, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just born in a dictatorship. A rural entrepreneur shared a similar experience in a viral video, full of enthusiasm. He wanted to start a family farm, but government red tape crushed his plans.
I responded directly to the national call to develop family farms, but a single piece of paper destroyed my dream. I was so fired up when I walked into the government office, ready to revitalize the countryside. But instead, they handed me a safety certification for self-built commercial housing. Why on earth do you need a safety certification to farm? They even asked if I needed an office. I told them I'm just renting land and building a small shed. I'm not setting up a central business district in a cornfield. And to top it off, even the shed for my farm tools requires an earthquake-resistant test. It's ridiculous. When I went to get the office stamp, the officials played bureaucratic ping pong, insisting on the third-party inspections. Do we really need to pass an architect's exam just to farm? Seriously, can the policies be a little more practical? There are already so few young people willing to work in agriculture. Please, don't let bureaucracy kill our passion.
Many netizens echoed his frustrations. In China, it's all about connections. If you have the right ones, everything's easy. If you don't, everything's impossible. Hardworking young people like him are exactly what the economy needs, but when the government crushes their ambitions, how can the country move forward? This is the harm of big government. They meddle in everything, down to the tiniest detail. All it does is create more opportunities for corruption while contributing nothing to real economic growth. Independent commentator Du Zhen argues that the CCP has always operated like a gang. using violence to seize power before 1949 and continuing this practice through land reforms and crackdowns on landlords and capitalists. He claims that in recent years, as the economy has struggled, government officials have intensified their exploitation of ordinary people, imposing arbitrary fines, backtracking on taxes, and making it nearly impossible for citizens to navigate the bureaucratic maze. According to Du, this reflects how deeply the government has become gangsterized. China expert Wang He also weighed in, saying that the CCP's rural revitalization policy is nothing but a sham. Wang said in 2020 the government declared it had eliminated poverty nationwide, but everyone knew it was a lie. Rural areas are the foundation of CCP rule and they fear losing control. But instead of truly helping, they just make life harder for people. The government's approach to rural management is regressing. There used to be talk of village autonomy, but now everything is under party control. And the local party representatives are basically just a bunch of thugs. Rural governance has turned into organized extortion. This kind of gangster behavior by the government leads to problems like local officials demanding bribes or deliberately refusing to help farmers. At the same time, rural areas are seeing an increase in theft and looting, causing serious losses for agriculture entrepreneurs. On March 10th, a farmer in Hubei province shared his heartbreaking experience. He invested 20 million yuan into growing Cape jasmine fruit. For years, the farm lost money, but by 2019, the market finally improved. Unfortunately, as soon as the price of Cape jasmine rose, the farm was overturned by villagers stealing the fruit. Some unscrupulous merchants even encouraged the theft, leaving the farm with almost nothing and pushing the company to the brink of bankruptcy.
投了2000多万，坚守了11年的种植基地。
In a video, a farmer shared his experience, saying that in 2002 they established Dongchen Agriculture Technology, focusing on the cultivation and development of Chinese medicinal herbs in their hometown. By 2014, they had contracted about 907 acres of barren hills and wastelands to plant red gardenia. At the time, the project gained significant attention from local government authorities and leaders and was welcomed by local villagers who stayed behind. Having been in agriculture for many years, they were mentally prepared for the fact that it would take 4 years for red gardenia to reach full production, meaning losses in the early stages. However, the market for red gardenia was particularly poor before 2020. Fresh fruit could only be sold for 2 yuan per kilogram. It wasn't until after the pandemic at the end of 2019 that red gardenia prices began to skyrocket, doubling every year, rising from 2 yuan per kilo to 12 yuan per kilo. At that point, everyone involved was incredibly excited, feeling that success was finally within reach. However, as soon as the market improved, large groups of villagers began stealing from the plantation. The theft seemed organized and premeditated. The farm arranged for teams to patrol and capture thieves, and many were caught and handed over to the local police stations. But the authorities refused to take meaningful action, citing reasons such as the thieves being elderly or the stolen amount being too small. Later, investigations revealed that unscrupulous traders were encouraging the villagers to steal, even though the farm provided substantial video evidence to the relevant departments on multiple occasions. No effective solutions were ever implemented.
更荒谬的是，反而给我们发了一个
What's even more absurd is that instead of helping us, they issued us a safety hazard rectification notice. Due to years of severe theft, we have been unable to recoup our investment. By 2023, both our company and my family were on the verge of bankruptcy. We approached the government to see if they could negotiate a delay in land rent payments. We hoped that after the harvest, we could gather enough funds to pay, but this proposal was indefinitely rejected. So we were forced to scramble for funds from all possible sources, hoping to gather enough to cover the rent before the next harvest. But before the fruit even ripened, those unscrupulous traders, working with villagers, started their theft 2 months early. As a result, we lost nearly the entire harvest.
In recent years, under the Chinese Communist Party's CCP so-called rural revitalization strategy, the government has planned to invest at least 7 trillion yuan. This initiative includes providing subsidies for farmers to establish family farms, encouraging state-owned infrastructure enterprises to enter the agriculture sector, and allowing rural homesteads to be bought and sold. However, many experts argue that the core issue in rural areas is that farmers do not own their land, and land privatization has not occurred. Historically, Chinese land belonged to farmers, but later, after 1949, the CCP collectivized both the land and residential properties, including ancestral homes. In reality, the state owns the land, meaning there are no true independent farmers in China. David Huang, a scholar on Chinese affairs, noted that domestic scholars have long advocated for family farming and the establishment of agriculture technology parks. However, under the current leasing system, family farms cannot thrive because farmers lack ownership rights. He emphasized farmland must be privatized. Only when farmers own their land can they have the rights to manage it independently. Historian Liu Qingquan also believes that the CCP's massive spending on the rural revitalization strategy will fail and that rural areas will continue to decline. He points out two main reasons. Number one, urban-rural disparity. Rural areas cannot attract or retain talent due to the vast gap in living standards between cities and the countryside. Number two, systemic issues. Since land is collectively owned, which in practice means it belongs to the Communist Party. Farmers cannot make long-term plans. Any investment in improving the land is risky because the government could reclaim the land or end the lease at any given time. Given these uncertainties, it is impossible for rural areas to prosper. Recently, the CCP released another document, number 1, continuing the rural revitalization theme for the 5th consecutive year from 2021 to 2025. While the official goal of rural revitalization is to make the countryside more prosperous, those familiar with the CCP know it is just another facade. Farmer Qing Shuzhong from Hebei province said that although some improvements have been made, such as paved roads and concrete buildings for schools and hospitals, the overall burden of healthcare, housing, and education has left people feeling no better off. He remarked, people's lives haven't improved in any meaningful way, let alone their happiness. A female blogger described the harsh reality in rural areas. Villages are becoming ghost towns as young people leave in droves.
现在农村就过年那几天热闹点儿。
These days, villages are only lively during the New Year holidays. The rest of the time, it's as quiet as a ghost town. Young people have all left. Only the elderly remain, holding on to their old homes. Schools are closing and most people are moving to the cities. Township health clinics are so basic that if you get sick, you still have to travel to the city for proper care. It's exhausting for both the elderly and the children. And when it comes to marriage, the situation is just as bad. Young women are all heading to the cities, leaving behind an imbalanced gender ratio in the countryside, and bachelor villages are becoming more common. Young people are desperate to escape their rural identities and squeeze into city life. Future mother-in-laws all want son-in-laws with their city apartments, so young men are left with no choice but to grit their teeth and push through. If the government is serious about rural revitalization, they need to figure out a way to attract young people back and give them reason to stay and build a future in the countryside. Another Chinese blogger warned that if things continue like this, 70% of rural households will collapse.
现在啊，从表面上看，好多农村变化特别的大。
On the surface, it looks like rural areas are improving. There are red brick houses, small villas, paved roads, and even parks and public squares. From the outside, it seems like living standards have improved a lot. But let me tell you, this shiny facade hides some serious problems. If these problems are unsolved, it won't matter how many fancy houses are built. Mark my words, if nothing changes, rural areas could regress by 30 or 40 years within 5 years. The blogger identified 3 major issues. Number 1, farming isn't profitable. The cost of seeds and fertilizers keeps rising, but crop prices keep falling. In some places, fresh vegetables are left to rot in the fields because there's no market for them. On top of that, the government imposes absurd rules on what can be grown. For example, there are strict regulations on non-grain crops. Many older farmers don't understand the rules, and after working hard all year, they end up losing everything. If the government finds out they've planted the wrong crop, their harvest can be confiscated and they may even be fined. Faced with these challenges, most people give up on farming altogether and leave to find work in the cities. Number 2, marriage is a financial transaction. Young people don't want to marry within the village because incomes are low, but dowries are high, sometimes costing tens of thousands of yuan. This pushes young people to leave rural areas as quickly as possible. Number 3, education is driving children away. Rural schools are gradually being merged with city schools. As a result, many children spend their childhood in urban areas and lose any emotional connection to their rural hometowns. When they grow up, they have no reason to return. The CCP recently announced a 20 yuan $2.75 USD increase in farmers' pensions, a move that exposes the harsh reality faced by the rural population, which makes up the majority of China's citizens. Historian Liu Yingquan pointed out that Chinese farmers hold the lowest social status. Strictly speaking, he said, there aren't even true farmers because they don't own the land they work on. Liu said a 20 yuan pension increase is meaningless. It doesn't even keep up with rising living costs. It won't solve any real problems. Just like the 2024 document number 1, this year's central policy document again emphasizes ensuring national food security. It dedicates significant section to continuously strengthening the supply capacity of key agricultural products like grain and stresses the need to promote high yield and efficient agricultural models on a large scale. According to previous plans from the Chinese government, China aims to establish nearly 200 million acres of high standard farmland by 2030. With substantial public funding already allocated and private capital encouraged to participate. By 2025, the government also plans to build 1,000 national-level ecological farms and support 10,000 local ecological farms across the country. A former Deputy Mayor Li Chuanliang, responsible for finance and the economy in Heilongjiang Province, told Radio Free Asia that China's grain supply is tightly controlled by the government with no real market force at play. He said document number 1 is just a political document. No matter what promises they make each year, the goal is always the same, to further control and stabilize agricultural production and food supply. He explained that state-owned grains reserves like Sinograin are the main tools used for control. He said most of the grain is purchased by Sinograin, which means the government controls the price. Li emphasized that the main reason for controlling agriculture and grain is to maintain social stability among rural populations. He noted the CCP's greatest concern over the years has always been keeping farmers and society stable. They don't actually care how much farmers earn. Everything depends on the regime's own needs.